This entitled neighbor is about to demand free materials from this poor guy just trying to build his fence. But when he tells him to go away, this choosing beggar is about to come back with a vengeance. Happy birthday, if today's your birthday, and on with the revamped show. Roughly a week ago, I was involved in one of the most ridiculous cases of choosing beggar I've ever witnessed, or read on this sub. The original scene went down in Afrikaans, so excuse me if the phrasing is a bit off. Me and my brother are both working adults and live in a city about 3-hour drive from the town my parents live in. Our parents were on their way back from a short holiday last weekend, and as it was Mother's Day and it had been a while since we last saw them, my brother and I asked them to make a slight detour on the way back so we could treat my mum to lunch. We usually don't make a big fuss out of Mother's Day, but as my brother and I had missed my mum's birthday 2 weeks prior due to unrelated work obligations, we conspired with my dad to get her a modest gift from each of us as a sort of belated birthday thing. So as we arrive at the restaurant, there were warm greetings and hugs all around, and we hand my mum the relatively small gift, 2 neatly wrapped and the other in a gift bag. Just to be clear, there wasn't any opening of gifts, tearing the paper or anything like that. We were all peripherally aware of a child screaming in the background, but as it was a fairly family-friendly restaurant, we didn't pay it any mind. Only, the screaming gets even closer, and soon we find a woman with a screaming and sobbing child, who looked to be around 6 or 7, standing at our table.
"Excuse me?"
she demands.
"You can't just go around doing this sort of thing in public."
Puzzled glances all around, wondering what the heck she was referring to. I share a look with my brother, seeing him mouth what I realized in hindsight was the name Karen. Because darn if she didn't fit the stereotype perfectly, haircut and all. "I'm sorry, what?" my brother asks in genuine bafflement.
"Opening gifts in public."
She spits in a way that suggests we might as well have been fornicating at the table.
"Now he's crying since he didn't get any."
She continues with a vague gesture at the sniffing, sobbing, red-eyed child, who looks like he ran afoul of 3 different strains of bronchitis. I was stunned speechless by the sheer temerity of the woman, but across the table my dad is visibly winding himself up to give this woman the tongue lashing of the century. Being the peacemaker that she is, my mum intercedes, clearly wishing to prevent the scene my dad or I were likely to cause. As it so happens, she had a small packet of chocolates, which they had gotten from the guest house they were staying at, in her handbag. So contrary to what likely anyone else would have done, my mum reaches into the bag and hands the small boy the packet across the table. The tears dry up momentarily as he stares at it, before angrily throwing it to the ground and resuming the sobs. He screams incoherently and gestures at the wrapped gifts which are sitting on the table on the empty seat to my mum's left.
"I think you should rather give him one of those,"
the woman nonchalantly says, and starts reaching across the table to grab one, which funnily enough contains a somewhat expensive hand cream my mum likes, and would have been far less useful to a child than the chocolates were, though I wouldn't have put it past him to try eating it. At this point, I grasped her arm around the wrist to prevent her from grabbing the gift. Definitely not hard enough to bruise, but I thought it would get the point across. It didn't. She rears back and attempts to slap me for daring to lay my hands on a woman. I'm not exactly able to effectively defend myself from a sitting position, so I get up. I am a pretty big guy at around 195 centimeters, or 6'4", and 110 kilograms, 240 pounds. And she was a relatively small woman, so I towered over her quite a bit. Contrary to what one so often reads on Reddit, this didn't seem to deter her in the slightest, and she proceeds to attempt to inflict some sort of harm on me with mad flailing, though I was easily able to keep her at arm's length. At this point, the staff get involved, and 2 waiters pull the woman, who's screaming and hissing by this point, away from our table. The manager gets involved, and there's a lot of screaming and yelling from both the woman and her child. As one might expect, she immediately starts making ridiculous accusations which get absolutely no traction, as there had been about 24 other people who had watched the whole thing go down. She's eventually firmly asked to leave the premises before the police get involved, and we get offered free dessert as compensation. So here's a question: is free dessert worth it to have to deal with a choosing beggar or an entitled parent? In this case, a combination of both. Honestly, for me, I think it would depend on the degree of exposure. You know, if I only had to deal with them for a couple minutes, and I didn't lose anything out of it, then yeah, I'll take that trade every time for a free dessert. But in this case, I don't know, it might have felt like you've totally ruined the evening, which was once a lovely night. And how nice was the mum, instead of reacting harshly, to actually show kindness to the kid, and he just throws the chocolate to the ground. Just shows you they're trying to get pleasure not in taking other people's stuff, but rather making other people feel bad about themselves. The backstory. I bought my first house about a year ago, yay me, and this year I decided to redo the fence for more privacy. Unfortunately, due to the heavy rains, all last month delayed much of the fence work. This week, I bought the stone and concrete and began to work. There's not a lot of space in the backyard, so most of the material is in the driveway, hence why some random strangers, neighbors included, will come up to me and ask for free material. However, there's one that takes the cake. Me minding my own business and working on the fence. Choosing beggar.
Hey, you giving away free material?
No, who are you?
I live 4 houses down.
Oh, so we're neighbors.
Yes, and your fence is coming out beautiful.
Well, thank you. It took me a while to find a white and blue stone to match the house. I'm currently working on it myself. I don't even know your name.
It's...
Insert CB's name here. Well, I don't want to get your hopes up, but I made sure I didn't buy any extra material because it's non-refundable. And if I do have extra material, I might give it to my sister. Sorry.
Well, I asked first.
Really having no patience nor don't have the time to explain why he can't have it. I say, I will see, but like I said, I won't have extra material left over because I measured. CB walks away. I thought this was the last time I see him. I was wrong. After work, I would go home and work on my fence for 3 to 4 hours, applying the material and concrete myself. He would catch me working on the fence and ask the same darn question.
Remember, if you have extra material, it's free to me because I asked first. Also, can you help me make my fence after you're done with yours?
I would answer the same. I made sure I have no extra material. And no, I won't help you because I'm usually tired from work. Yesterday I was working on my fence and guess who walks by? CB across the street watching as I work. He comes over and starts measuring my fence. I look up puzzled and confused until I say, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" CB comes with a tape measure.
I'm measuring your fence, making sure it's in your property line. Also calculating to see how much extra material you would have. So it seems you might have 4 boxes of stone left over. And that means I would have to buy 3 or 4 more boxes. How much did a box of stone cost you?
Excuse me, but I would appreciate if you stopped bothering me. I am working on my fence. If you need material, go buy it at the store. And please stop bothering me.
But how much did each box cost?
Go to the store and buy material yourself. A few hours later, I am still working on my fence. CB comes up to me mad.
You didn't tell me each box cost X amount of dollars?
I look up to him and said, well, I loved the stone, and I work really hard to buy myself stuff.
But I don't work and I need it for free, please!
Still working on the fence, I purposely dropped some material on the floor.
What are you doing?
Leave me alone or I will continue to break more material.
But remember I asked first.
As he walks away and crosses the streets. The ramblings of a lunatic. It's almost like this choosing beggar never grew up. It's like he still holds the kindergarten logic of like, well, I was there first, so it's mine, regardless of any other factors whatsoever. What's that? You're planning to give any extra material that you might have even though it's very unlikely to your sister? Because she's your family?
Yeah, but I asked first.
I was at a busy area in central Tokyo. I stopped into a cafe with my kid for a snack and get in line. I noticed that someone was speaking in English and saw that one of the cashiers was trying to communicate with a very frustrated lady. American by accent. The choosing beggar. Choosing beggar is well dressed with an Hermes bag. Couple of people ahead buy their stuff and head off to pick up their drinks. I get up to my cashier and make my order and pay. I look over and the lady still seems to be having an issue, so I offer to translate. A bit cut down. Anything I can help you with?
She can't process my credit card.
You don't have cash or another card? Apple Pay? I notice the iPhone X in her hand.
I want to use the card. I have some cash, but not enough.
I ask the teller what the issue is in Japanese, and she responds that the card keeps getting rejected by the machine. I look at the price and it is around 1,000 yen, about $10. How much cash do you have on you? CB looks in her wallet and I see she has a 10,000 yen bill and change. You have plenty. Use that bill.
No, I need it for later.
How much change do you have? Mind you, this is after me having waited in line, paid for my stuff, and even having my kid go off and sit down to eat his cake. CB pulls out some coins and it's just shy of $8, 800 yen or so. I'll pay for your cake, you buy the drink with that change.
Oh, that's great, thank you.
I tell this to the cashier and she starts to process it. Choosing beggar to cashier.
I also want another cake and same drink.
Using gestures and pointing to the cake with 2 fingers raised and the drink. Cashier looks at me confused. I'm sorry, are you going to use the other bill?
I need to get stuff for my friend as well.
I don't see a friend anywhere. Look, I'll just get you the original cake, but please use your money for your friend. You can get cash out later.
You won't buy my friend a drink?
I'm trying to help, but I think that's a bit much. Meanwhile, cashier has processed the cake for me to use my iPhone Suica payment system, and I paid. Have a nice day. You can use the coins for your drink. I walk towards my kid and sit down. CB in a sarcastic sounding tone.
Well, thank you, but if you wanted to show kindness, you could have bought something for my friend as well.
CB must have given the coins as she was receiving change.
If this was reversed, I would have paid. It would really help if you can help me out now.
I say nothing. Cashier trying to help other customers, but she's in the way.
It would be rude for me to go back without something for her.
When I got here, you had only that in hand. Didn't seem like you were planning to buy anything else. There are banks nearby which can help you with international cards, or you can use your money. Or have your friend come by and you pay her back or something. CB glares at me for a bit, turns around and walks out. At the door,
you are incredibly rude.
Now if you're going to be cheap and try and manipulate others to buy your food for you, you're going to need a better excuse than, oh well, the money that's in my wallet, I'm gonna need that for later. Which is not an excuse at all. If you need it for later, meaning you have something important you need to buy, and therefore you can't spend your money now, that means you shouldn't be buying anything at the store. If it simply means that you need that cash for something, and you're too lazy to get the cash out later, well, that's not an excuse either. Why should somebody else pay for your cake simply because you're too lazy to get cash out? So my grandfather passed away a few years ago, and grandmother was left with the house and 3 hectares of land to her name. A few months later, my grandmother's half-brother, whose wife is also dead, sold his apartment in the city and moved with my grandmother to help her out, as they were very close since I can remember. Our families used to be very close, and my grandma's brother was super nice and cool guy. It's just that I never had much contact with his grandchildren, as they were living in the other side of the country. Last year, my grandmother had also passed, and me and 2 brothers were each left with 1 hectare of land to our names, and the house was left for me. Since we all were very close, we let my grandma's brother to continue living there, since after selling his apartment, he really didn't have anywhere else to go, and he didn't want to move to the other side of the country with his kids. Not to mention, the house itself had almost no value, and there were other houses in the village that were standing on the market for years with no interest. So comes this spring, and my grandma's brother also passes away, and it's during the funeral where absurd begins. I was smoking outside the church when his grandson comes and immediately goes down to business. Conversation went something as follows.
So what about inheritance?
What do you mean?
My grandpa's part.
Didn't he buy you a car and gave you money for a down payment on your apartment?
Yeah, but he sold his apartment and gave me money. It wasn't inheritance. I'm talking about inheritance of the house and lands where he lived.
Well, the house and lands belong to my grandparents. Your grandfather had nothing to do with it. You can feel him getting irritated.
But my grandfather lived here, so surely it belongs to him.
We let him live there because he didn't want to move. He never had any ownership.
But what about all the help he gave to your grandmother? Surely he deserves some reward for being so helpful.
It doesn't change anything. The house and the land belongs to us for more than a year now, since it was my grandmother's. He was being very irritated.
He deserves some part of inheritance, and I will be demanding my rightful part.
Dude, you got your part when your grandpa sold his apartment and gave almost everything to you and your mum.
He lived there, so the part also belongs to him and his family, and we will be making a claim.
Dude, there's no claim to make. The inheritance is already claimed.
We will see about that.
And it's been a few months now that he's been bothering us on Facebook and on the phones about how we stole his inheritance. Oh, how noble of this choosing beggar to defend his dead grandfather. Well, he deserved some of the inheritance because he helped the grandmother. Yeah, it's pretty easy to defend his claim on the inheritance when the real person who's going to be getting it is you. There's absolutely no subtlety in what he's actually trying to say. I deserve that inheritance because I want it. If he really thought that he deserved some of the inheritance, he would have fought and defended him while he was still alive. But he didn't care back then because as far as he could tell, there was nothing for him to gain.
Submit your story to be read on the channel at VoiceyHereStories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.